Hello, it's Friday, July 24th. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 15 of What's Happening in Myanmar, a show from the Frontier Myanmar podcast family. I'm your host, Nick Dunlop. This week in Myanmar, ASEAN convened in the Philippines to address Myanmar's crisis. The TNLA held unprecedented talks with the junta. Malaysia announced its own refugee system, while the junta continues its forced conscription campaign, and fuel and egg prices surge. ASEAN foreign ministers gathered in the Philippine city of Pasay for high-level meetings focusing heavily on the Myanmar crisis. The 59th ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting included an informal consultation on the implementation of the five-point consensus, the peace plan agreed upon in 2021 that has largely failed to end violence due to the non-compliance by Myanmar's military regime. Philippine Foreign Secretary Teresa Lazaro, who served as ASEAN's special envoy on Myanmar, proposed the appointment of a long-term special envoy to replace the current system of annual envoys, which she described as not really that effective. Brunei suggested ASEAN's secretariat could assist this permanent position, though funding remains a challenge. The meetings followed informal talks in Bangkok on July 12th between the ASEAN foreign ministers and their regime counterpart Timor-Leste. The Special Advisory Council for Myanmar condemned this meeting, accusing Lazaro of timidity and poor judgment for not extracting concessions from the junta. The Philippines Department of Foreign Affairs defended the engagement as constructive dialogue necessary for pursuing peace. Meanwhile, ASEAN parliamentarians for human rights called on Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and Timor-Leste President Ramos Horta to press for the immediate and unconditional release of Aung San Suu Kyi and all political prisoners. The group specifically requested that independent access to the 81-year-old detained leader be made a non-negotiable condition for further engagement with the regime. The Ta'ang National Liberation Army held unprecedented talks with the regime in Naypyidaw on Sunday, July 19th. Led by Vice Chair Lieutenant General Ta Jotja, the TNLA delegation demanded constitutional recognition of an autonomous Ta'ang state while pledging not to secede from the Union. The regime's negotiation team, headed by the chair of the National Solidarity and Peacemaking Negotiation Committee, Lieutenant General Ya Pie, responded that the TNLA's demands would be considered within the framework of the 2008 Constitution, a position effectively rejecting the request by the Town Group as creating a new state requires parliamentary approval unlikely to be granted, as well as a nationwide referendum. Leaked meeting minutes published by Kit Media reveal the TNLA's willingness to participate more proactively in the new government's peace process, along with allies like the United Wa State Army. The documents also showed the TNLA requesting recognition of its governance over Nam San, Man Tong, Nam Tu, and Nam Kang townships in northern Shan State. Myanmar Now reported that the powerful United Wa State Army and the Myanmar National Democratic Alliance Army will hold separate talks with the regime next month, reportedly at China's urging. Meanwhile, the 7EAO alliance of ethnic groups, signatories to the nationwide ceasefire agreement that have maintained neutrality in the civil war since the February 2021 coup, held discussions with the junta on Monday and Tuesday, focusing on local development and humanitarian assistance. The Political Prisoners Network Myanmar revealed that 148 political prisoners have died in 32 prisons across the country between July 2021 and May of this year due to inadequate medical treatment. This includes 2 minors and an unspecified number of elderly prisoners among the dead. 64 prisoners died from cardiovascular and chronic illnesses including heart disease, liver failure, and cancer, while 7 died from injuries sustained during torture. In one case, a 72-year-old farmer died in Bago Region Hospital on July 12 after suffering a stroke while serving a 10-year terrorism sentence. The Political Prisoners Network Myanmar say he was denied adequate medical care while incarcerated. After more than 10 years of award-winning journalism, we at Frontier are fighting for our survival. The grants that once supported 2/3 of our operations are no longer available. Despite this, our journalists continue their difficult and dangerous work, but with decreasing resources. Please encourage friends and colleagues to join Frontier so we can continue producing our trademark features, in-depth investigations, and on-the-ground reporting. By joining Frontier, you'll be supporting us to tell the stories that matter and to cut through the noise and reveal what's really happening in Myanmar. Please click the link in the podcast show notes to join us. Thank you. Malaysia has requested the UN Refugee Agency to temporarily stop registering refugees as it prepares to implement its own program in January. The shift will significantly impact Myanmar refugees, who constitute nearly 194,000 of the approximately 216,000 refugees in Malaysia, including over 126,000 Rohingya. Malaysia is not a signatory to the 1951 UN Refugee Convention and does not permit refugees to work or access education. The government also announced plans to deport around 5,000 Myanmar nationals from detention centres pending regime approval. This policy change occurs amid a worrying rise in anti-Rohingya sentiment, with 23 human rights groups recently reporting that members of the Rohingya community in Malaysia are facing increased threats, harassment, and violence fueled by growing hate speech. Myanmar is facing a new wave of price hikes as the regime Petroleum Products Regulatory Department announced significant increases in fuel costs. The price of RON 92 petrol climbed to 3,350 chats per litre, or 75 cents, at the market rate, while RON 95 rose to 3,460 chats and premium diesel jumped to 4,315 chats. The news triggered panic buying, with long queues forming at petrol stations across Yangon as many outlets ran out of stock. A stock owner revealed his weekly fuel quota has been severely reduced, worsening the supply situation. The price of a single egg has also surged from 500 to 700 chats this week. The increase is attributed to the regime's recent policy of reducing imports, which has created shortages of essential livestock medication and farming supplies. Compounding the issue, outbreaks of disease in poultry farms during the monsoon season have sharply reduced egg production. With Myanmar only able to produce 10% of its required poultry medication, several major grocery chains have stopped stocking eggs altogether as suppliers raise prices beyond what retailers can charge. In parliamentary debates, officials defended the regime's lawful conscription policies despite reports of arbitrary arrests and raids on homes. Multiple cases of missing persons believed to have been forcibly conscripted were reported in Yangon and Sagaing regions. Meanwhile, the junta-aligned Shani Nationalities Army abducted more than 40 residents of Kachin State's Mugong Township, forcibly conscripting the men among them while releasing the women. Military operations continued across multiple regions this week. In Rakhine State, a regime airstrike on Sunday killed 5 civilians and injured 19 others, including children, in Mae Town, Tangguk Township. The military also conducted airstrikes in Rakhine's Chautu and Marau townships. Resistance forces reported several successful attacks. The Union Liberation Front claimed to have killed 4 soldiers in an ambush in Sagaing's Yen Mabin Township. The Camp Balu District PDF reported killing 5 soldiers during an ambush near Kabo village in Sagaing's Camp Balu Township, while the Mianjan District PDF said it killed 5 soldiers in attacks on 4 regime targets in Mandalay region's Notoji Township. In the Chin state capital Hakka, the Chenlan Defense Force Hakka assassinated a police officer and one of his subordinates, prompting regime troops to shut down roads and conduct searches. And that's the latest from Myanmar for this week. I'll be back next week to bring you a roundup of all the stories making the headlines on Friday, July 31st.